evening. It is January 12th, 2023. We're back with Hobby Talk with PSA Canada. Brad Hartland has returned. He has seized power back from Luke in a bloodless coup. Good evening, Brad. How are you doing?
Good. How are you making out tonight?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. It's been a little bit of a. We were chatting a little bit before we got started. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
So Luke right now is buried underneath things, and also the bloodless coup. So he's recovering from that. So that'll be a thing. And then of course a new father. New father is also not going to be joining us. He's got his own things that he's going to be dealing with. Again, congratulations. We want to make sure that we extend that, but at the same time, yeah. Well, I think Brad and I can hold down the fort this time around, have a little bit of a chat. However, I did want to give a little bit of an update as well. We were chatting a little bit beforehand, and a bunch of the expo stuff is starting to come in. But we had a good example because I mentioned to you guys that I submitted some cards for the expo. And my example is actually a really good one of some things to consider when you submit some of that stuff. So I broke my order, to give you guys a background, I broke my order into 3 pieces. So it's actually 3 different sheets that I did over the course of it intentionally because there were a couple different levels and tiers. So one of them was basically a bunch of vintage cards that I was cracking out and submitting. They were their own deal. We know the vintage ones have been a little bit slow, so that's been a little bit of a challenge, something to bear in mind. So those were their own order in one level, and then I had a bunch of them in bulk, but one of them came with a bunch of bulk and then one at a different level, which usually creates a little bit of slowdown. And I expected that going, which was fine. That was the bulk of the cards that I submitted. And then another one were some of my Mike Medano Grail cards, and those were in a higher tier, so I submitted them on their own separately on a separate sheet. I've actually got the 3 different sheets with me, and I was chatting with Brad. But it's basically like having 3 different orders. So it creates kind of the staggered thing where they're all kind of operating in their own speed as they're getting processed. Do you want to add a little insight into how that affects things a little bit on your end, Brett?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to mute this for 1 sec. I'll just come right back. Give me
Sure,
two.
no problem.
Give me 10 seconds.
Yeah, no problem. Do your thing. So I'll say hi to some folks while he's doing that. So Nico, good evening. Absolutely. Albert, good evening. Yannick, good evening. Absolutely. So I just wanted to give you guys a little background because that's an example of, even though I did a lot of that intentionally, I did it on purpose in order to create that little bit of separation. It means that I've got basically 3 different order numbers. So we talked about on the website, you can have your, process and look in your statuses. Well, I would technically have 3 numbers that I would be checking because they're different sets operating at different speeds. And Brad actually gave me 2 out of the 3, so I was able to monitor the difference between one and another. But that's something important to bear in mind. So go ahead, Brad. You were going to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You summed it up there. It's one thing. We always make the assumption that we want to save shipping charges for our customers. So if you submit a card at Express, one at Economy, one at Bulk, one at Value, we'll hold them here until they all come back. Now, in our world, the perfect world, and same at PSA does in Santa Ana, if you submit cards at different levels, they're going to, once they're done, that level's done, they ship, they invoice, they charge your card, and they ship to you right away. So that's one of the advantages that we offer as PSA Canada as well. You only pay the 1 shipping charge if you wait. But it does create a little bit of an issue for us on our end. It just makes it more difficult. So we're holding orders now. Like I said, we had 6 8-foot tables that we went and purchased to have the cards out. It's pretty cool to look at. I was thinking about taking a picture of it and show them, but it's like a massive row of cards that are all numbered, ordered, like Carlos. Like we have your 1 order there and it's waiting for 2 more. And it goes all the way down the line. So once the orders keep coming in, we go through, and when we can fill an order, that's great for us. It's like, oh, yes, 3 orders are back for Carlos. We can invoice, we can ship, and get it out right away. So it's it's going to happen twice a year. It's going to be with the Toronto show, with the amount of individual orders that come back. Like so many people submit it 2 or 3 different service levels. So it's been fun, but we've kept everything organized right now. Everything seems to be running smooth. The UPS was awful happy with us over in 2023, our local UPS store, Michelle and Graham, that came over from South Africa, do a great job with us, and they help us out a lot. They're the #1 UPS store the last 2 weeks in Canada. So yeah, it was nice to see. So we're shipping out packages as fast as we possibly can. And I should say, even to the chat or anyone that chimes in later, thanks to everyone. Like we've got a really good customer base now, and we appreciate the patience. And I know sometimes lots of questions come through, and we do our best to answer them right away. But we do sincerely appreciate everyone's patience when we work on this, especially with the website now too. Because once we put in that was a learning thing for us. We've never done that before. So all of a sudden now you see on the website, you see once it hits Halifax Normally, under normal circumstances, we can invoice and ship within 24 hours. But with this volume of cards coming back, it's just impossible. So on Friday, I updated any ones that were in Halifax, even if they were in FedEx, still in transport with FedEx, I put Halifax. So it kind of set us back 3 or 4 days. But if it says in Halifax now and your order is complete by Monday, we will have everyone invoiced and everyone's cards ready to ship out. So we'll be completely caught up, which is great.
That sounds good. And I'll keep folks updated on kind of my channel as well, because I always like to give a little bit of, basically to give a gauge of how it is, because I submitted cards at the expo that I dropped off that I mentioned in all those different sequences. And one piece that I'll add, and I'll get to Nico's question here in a second. But to give you context, basically those started getting inputted by PSA right at the beginning of December. So put this into context. I have, and 2 of my orders contain predominantly bulk. And like I said, vintage, we've noticed, has been slower. So just bear that in mind. If it qualifies as vintage, those have tended to be slower because a lot of the graders seem to be focused more on modern, ultra modern, and those categories. So those tend to move a little bit quicker. But those were under bulk, which was meant, I think it was, what was it at? It was 120 days is I think what it was shooting for. Okay, December the 1st. It is January the 12th. And we're talking about 2 out of my 3 orders, which included predominantly bulk, being in Brad's physical possession. Pretty good. And that includes the holidays and the Christmas and the New Year's holiday. So that isn't half bad. That's actually operating well within the spec. So if the third one stays within the spec, not too bad. So we'll kind of monitor that. But so far so good on a lot of that stuff. And Brad's been getting a ton of stuff that also qualifies under that bulk as well. So it's been zipping along, at least getting back to him.
Yeah, no, it's good. And it's funny when you start to, after doing this for so long now, you get to see what PSA deals with. I had a conversation with a guy today. Just kind of explaining when they had their $15 special that ended December 31st. So you have Christmas going into December 31st. People wanted to get in on that last minute $15. So after New Year's, when PSA opened, I don't even know what days they were shut, but obviously I assume they were shut on January 1st. But January 2nd, 3rd, 4th, those days, all those packages, people trying to get their orders in before December 31st, those would have all arrived at PSA. So our shipment arrived at PSA January 3rd. It's just getting entered into the system now. So that's about 10 or 11 days from when it arrived at PSA before it actually got entered into the system, which under normal circumstances, it's 2 days, maybe 3 days. So that adds an extra week onto it. But the reasoning behind it makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why I want to give context, though. I'm saying from the beginning of December is when the clock started, so to speak. But even if I use that as the clock, that's about a month and change, which isn't too bad so far. And like I said, I'll monitor it because we always want to see the end to end. Yeah, I think it's more relevant to be, I'll include the holiday in the consideration, take that into account, but still end to end, so far so good. And we'll see if we can land the plane and finish the transaction in that way.
Yeah.
So Nico had a question here. The 25 show special said, I think 120 days. Is that regular business day timeline?
Regular days. Yeah. So that was regular days. Now PSA on their new pricing, they just switched, which we did as well, to business days. I like the regular days. I don't like the business days, but I think I know their reason. A lot of other companies use business days as well. So I think it's kind of like if you run a store and your store has plus tax or including tax. At the end of the day, you pay the same at the register, but perception is a lot. So I feel like that could be one of the moves. Like at AMG Collectibles, all our prices include tax. At our local competitors, their prices, they're like, oh, I can get it for $89 at such and such. And you guys are 100. I'm like, yeah, $89 at 15%. They're 105. We're under by $5.
Yeah.
But it's that perception. And we struggle going back and forth. So I think that's kind of the same situation PSA deals with. So
I think it's a weird move though, because I will say that most people struggle to count business days. Business days is awkward because it can be like if there's a holiday or something, like, well, that technically one of those days doesn't count. It's like, that's 5 days. Actually, it's 4. And then carries over to the next week. Hockey Mark Collectibles, good evening. Good evening, Dave. Brad, has PSA communicated anything about this Bird Magic PSA 10 that was reholdered from a fake slab?
No, I kind of followed along.
You don't have a personal line to be told on these things? You're not in the hotline? You're not in the war room?
No, not in the war room. Unfortunately not. But I did follow up on some of the videos I just watched on it. And I'm sure it will all come out in the wash and we'll hear about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think though it's important to kind of reiterate is that it's like still bulk submitter. not actually under collectors. So it's like
Yeah.
there's no secret correspondence. It's like the information a lot of times is like if Brad can reach out to somebody directly, like it doesn't pertain directly to his business. You know, he's dealing with boxes. It's like, look, man, you guys deal with your business. I need to know what my boxes are doing. What's going on with the stuff from the expo and the stuff that we sent out? That's what I need to know about first.
Yeah.
We can talk about the scuttlebutt after. So we'll see. So in a lot of cases, a lot of those folks that I talk to who are kind of on the periphery, but still, you know, involved in a certain way with business with them, it's like, but they find out the same way everybody else does. Press releases or videos. You know, you tell me what's going on.
Yeah. I think it's remarkable how good PSA, when they make a decision, it's a very tight circle. And it's amazing how word doesn't get out more in advance. I feel like when they make a decision, me and Carlos have talked about this many times. I feel like a decision is made and then it just instantly happens. It's very tight-lipped, and they keep their moves. How do you want to describe that best?
It's very discreet. Let's say extremely
yeah.
discreet. Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes perplexingly so. Now, I will say, I will give a little bit of an update. It's not like I would say it's officially from PSA, but it's officially from PSA that they've shared. So you know, their president. I always forget whether it's Hose or Haj. Is like the new president. So he was on the crossover this past week. You know, so he's starting to make the rounds, public appearances and such. And I think he's going to be on the Stacking Slabs podcast. So he's starting to make appearances. We might have to get Hodge or Hoj or whatever the case. We might have to drag him in here for a couple of questions ourselves then. Especially if he's going to respond to those things. I have questions. But what I got out of it that I thought was interesting was that he did reiterate the new pricing structure they're doing with the new year. Because on my channel, I speculated that in my mind, I think there's room underneath that $4.99 level, because there are folks that are like, well, my card's like $100. I don't want to have to, you know, $19 US equivalent. That's a little bit high for my purposes. So not having, you know, $199 or a $99, you know, declared value level like before. Like in the past, there was a $99 declared value level for cheaper stuff that you just wanted to put in volume. That was the bulk rate previously. Now, he didn't say they were going to do that or that make any changes to it. He reiterated the simplifications argument which they're making, which again, I question that a little bit because there's no $9.99 level. There's a big gap between these two. There are elements that I do think are better, but I do think there's some area that potentially there's some questions or improvement you could have there. However, he did reiterate that they're going to do specials. So that means that, so there's where your underneath could come into play again, where if they do a special similar to that $15 TCG and $15 bulk special, that could be their way around it. So good evening, Paul. Good evening, Eric. I like the questioning nature. Is it though? Facts, Bobbles. Facts. Good evening, Baz. Absolutely. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because that comes directly from the horse's mouth. So the only time we're like 100% like comfortable with what, you know, knowing for sure is if they A, officially announce it, or B, it comes from the president of PSA. If they go out there and flat out just say it, even when Nat Turner says something, I still have to take it with a grain of salt. He is the CEO of Collectors, but he's not the one running day-to-day operations, so I have to separate the two. I'll take what he says under consideration because he certainly has the ability to relay his wishes, but they hired a president to run that part of the business for a reason. They're the ones who should know what's going on every single day, day to day. So if I get it from them, I'm going to take that at the highest level of, okay, then this is what you guys are going with, at least for now.
Yeah. I think I haven't talked with Ryan yet, but he has mentioned us in quite a few of his different podcasts, which is great to hear from him. But my first impression is he's a good guy. You know, I sincerely think he might be long-term in this position. I hope so. I can say my primary contact at PSA has, since I started 2.5 years ago, is I think I'm on number 5 or 6. So I feel like Ryan's moved his family to Santa Ana, California. He's kind of embedded himself there, and I can see his passion in the hobby. And I hope he'll be there for a long time, and that way he can keep doing his thing. I'll be impressed.
The only thing that we'll need though, Brad, is now the next logical step is you're like, Ryan, acknowledge me. You got to be like, acknowledge me. It's like, no, I know you mentioned me. I mean, acknowledge me. I was like, all right, pick up the phone. Let's go. Let's chat.
Do you know what's funny? When things are working good, and in business, I've always said this, like when you have partnerships or relationships that cause no stress, are running like I don't want to say we're running perfectly. Obviously, there's always room for improvements. But when you just mention that yeah, we have a strong partner in Canada. They're doing their thing. We're out of sight because we don't cause PSA any problems. Knock on wood, I want to maintain it that way, but that's what I enjoy. I'm okay being under the radar. Obviously, I'd like to have more knowledge on operations and some certain things, but I do like being under that radar. So it's nice.
No, for sure. But it's one of those things. The reason I say it a little bit tongue in cheek, but
Yeah.
the reason I do mention it though is because, yeah, sometimes everybody is a little bit in the dark. Sometimes we'll all find out about stuff at the same time. It's like, oh, so that's what you're doing. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And then everybody else has got to kind of respond accordingly, and we'll see how that kind of plays out. But again, last year is an indicator. Stuff changes. So it's like, don't assume anything is set in stone. And then as we get information and gets doled out, I want to keep hearing from him as time goes on, because that'll be interesting to see where their heads are at as time goes on and what they're deciding to do as they change things.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I know we've mentioned it, Carlos, but we're going to definitely have some guys from PSA headquarters in Santa Ana on the show in 2023. That's things that we're going to work on as we build up our game plan. It's been super busy time for all of us, especially with the holidays, but we've got some, the more me and Carlos brainstorm behind the scenes, we're going to have some cool ideas for the channel to spice things up a little bit. So
yeah, I think now that we've got to the new year, we've got an opportunity. You guys have to get out from underneath the pile of slabs that you're going to have to deal with now. But
yeah,
then we can start like planning in earnest and really start nailing down like, hey, let's get so and so on. Let's arrange it and make it happen. And we can have a little fun. We can have a little fun with a couple of folks that Brad. That could be a little bit fun to have a chat with. That we can arrange that. They can we'll work something out. Same format as usual, guys. We're going to chat about a couple of things. I want to chat with Brad. I've got some stuff we can play around with a little bit, but also if you have questions or anything you want to chat about in general, I would say open it up. Dave's question was perfectly valid, but we just don't have more information than anybody else. We're just in the same spot. We're all kind of just watching. But in the same vein, if you got general questions, feel free to throw them in. That way we can have the interactive part of it, because I like having that part. Also, if you check this out on replay after the fact, feel free to throw a comment if you have a question or anything you want conceived of. Sometimes we'll look back, and if there's something specific, we'll pose the question to Brad or anybody else on the team who happens to be on the show. So one thing I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit, and this is something I actually got a chance to have a chat with on the YouTube channel, where we were talking a little bit about, because I mentioned one of the orders was some cards for the personal collection that I was doing in, and it was a lot of the 90s stuff. Because I'm a fan of those ones. That was kind of the era that I enjoyed when they started playing around with it. And it was talking about mostly about the technology and a lot of the different stuff that the manufacturers were doing. So that was kind of fun here. So Dave here, include more cards. Maybe ask folks if you can review their. We've talked about this. The only thing is you'd have to get their permission. Yeah. So specifically, your second point is the key one. So when we're having a chat here, I've shown cards from my submissions on here because they're my cards. So I can a little bit, yeah, show those, sure, by all means. So that's definitely something we can do, but it's tricky because not everybody would be so keen on having their cards shown. So we'll kind of bear it in mind, but it's just something to talk about. I assume they're out of range though, Brad. I think the cards that we were talking about, they're not within reach. The ones from the recent incoming, are they out of reach or?
Nope, they're all here.
Oh, they are. Do you want to show the Grail one? Because those are fun. Those are the really cool ones. So those are the 90s Medana ones.
Oh, so no, those ones are in shipping in Santa Ana. They're done. I know okay. The grades.
Got it.
I would show them. I do have the grades, but we got to show the physical card.
Oh, okay. So the physical cards are still en route. They haven't arrived.
Yeah, the 13 are here. The 3 are in.
Actually, the 13 are fun because they allow me to forward my wrestling agenda. So that's actually kind of tempting. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, we should do that. We should do those tomorrow night.
Yeah, we'll say. Tell you what, Dave. If you tune in on Friday, I will talk to Brad after, and we will share one of the submissions because I have a 13. I have 3 separate submissions. I have a 3-card submission, which are some Grail cards that have been in my Medano collection here that I picked up the last couple of years. I have a 13-card submission that includes some wrestling stuff and also some. I think I've got a Juan Soto card in there. There's a little bit of a mix blend, and then also there is another one that's vintage. But that one I think is the slowest one. I think that's the vintage one has been the one that's a little slower. And I will show that when it comes as well, but it's got to get in hand first.
Yeah.
That's cool. So then that means the bulk one beat the higher tier one to your door.
To have back, to beat the economy. Yeah. That's why, again, I always say to people this, submit at the lowest level you're comfortable with from an insurance standpoint.
Yeah, well, with the ones that I'm talking about, I had to go higher because those were those are much more expensive cards. I was like, I can't play with that.
Absolutely. No, but today, Dave's questions too, show more cards. I definitely want to do that. And I know I have a bunch of submitters that I like to, because that is one of the absolute best parts of the job, is seeing all this stuff coming back, being a collector and seeing the cards come. Obviously 95% of the time it's good, but there's still that other side, you know, when you have cards that are altered, you have cards that are, what have we had come back that was interesting? And I didn't catch them. There's a couple Toronto submissions. There's one guy I felt bad for. He submitted some 87 Flair Jordans.
Okay.
And I didn't take that submission, and it was no one's fault, but they were clearly fake. So, and he submitted them at economy level. So it's kind of, that's tough when I see it, because if I would have seen that, I would have said, hey, you know what? Don't bother submitting these. We try to catch as much as we can, but
yeah. And it's also a privacy thing. Like I said, I am more forthcoming. I have a YouTube channel, so I'm going to share the cards no matter what. So I have no problem sharing in advance, and then I'll do a video when they come in anyway and show them a little bit closer with the nicer camera, and it'll be easier to see. So I'm willing to be forthcoming with that. It's like, this is what I'm submitting, this is what I got back, so people can see both sides of the transaction. But for a lot of folks, maybe they're really cool cards, but they're like, no, they're private. I don't want to share that with anybody else. It's their right not to have their stuff shared when they didn't ask for it and they didn't say cool, no problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had a really nice Babe Ruth Willards come back. That was a gorgeous card. What's that, 23-25 or 33-35? I forget exactly the years, how they go, but that was an awesome card, came back this week. We had 252 Topps mantles came back, a 1 and a 1.5. I delivered one of them today to a gentleman that had the card since 1952. And,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it was a great story. We had a long chat. He has a couple other sets, and he wanted to sell, but his son-in-law doesn't want him to sell right now. So I said, well, just get the mantle, grade it, and just go from there. And it came back a 1, but it's a very, very nice, great eye appeal for a 1. So that was always fun. And he got the card back, and he's like, it's funny because it cost him $1,500 to have the card graded. And he's like, that's more than I spent on every card that I own. I said, absolutely. Right.
Yeah, that price point, if you pretty much have to. It's like it would have been charged up at that price anyway, because the value is already there. It's built in. So Peter says, like the new website, been using it daily last few weeks to track order status. Good to hear. Free submission giveaways. I don't know if that's a thing. Maybe that's when we give to the Hoj.
Exactly.
So we leave that for, it's like, hey, can we have a couple? And listen, it would be nice. I would love it, and I don't think it's a bad idea at all. But it's one of those things where, like, it is. I do have to remind folks that, and I think Peter knows this. It's like, you have to remind folks that PSA Canada is not actually owned by collectors. PSA Canada is literally a business. It is technically basically a family business. So it's Brad and Sherry and a lot of members of the team, and also you've seen some of the other team members. It's like, no, they literally, if free giveaway would literally come out of their pocket.
Yeah.
Which in some cases makes sense, but it's also like, it's not like they don't have business. He's got tables full of cards.
Yeah.
But if PSA ever made a possibility, it would be lovely. It would be a lovely thing to extend out to folks, and it'd be kind of cool. And we could make you jump through hoops for it, for entertainment. I mean, for the lovely people that are getting the free, we make them jump through hoops for our amusement.
Exactly.
So Rod says, wrestling agenda. Absolutely. I've been promoting the wrestling cards. It's not for everybody, but I'm having fun with it. The big bulk of the order has a bunch of stuff. Most of that stuff, honestly, is for my PC. Now, there are some cards that in turn I am going to flip as for a couple of those sheets, but one of the orders is a complete PC for my Mike Modano collection. The big bulk one has a bunch of wrestling cards. Those are for me. Those are for my collection as well. But there's some cards in there that, depending on what they come back with, they may end up on eBay or something at some point. So it's a mixed bag. And some of those cards may in turn then pay for my order. So it's always a bit of a mixed bag in how I do it.
Yeah.
Dave says, those are exactly the cards I'd like seeing. No names of customers needed. It's not even the names, though. The second somebody sees it's their card, if they didn't sign off on that and say, hey, that's cool, that's, nobody signs on to have their stuff. If they want discretion, then you have to respect that. Unless they say, yeah, okay, no problem, go ahead, share it.
Yeah. And we have some submitters, like our larger submitters that submit through us, that necessarily people might not know that they submit through us. So it's not for me to share that. So some of the really cool cards that, like, we have, I'd say we have probably 5 or 6 off the top of my head of the biggest submitters to PSA in Canada submit through us. They like it. They used Len before. 2 of them are new. 4 of the guys used Len before. And it's fun. Like but they want that discretion. They don't want to know they use our services, etc. So
Yep. That's why I say you have to respect it, but it's always something that we can bear in mind. And if it's down the road, if there's an opportunity that some folks that Brad deals with who would be like, "Hey, we do this whole thing on YouTube. Would you be okay with showing off a couple of cards?" If they say yes, then maybe that becomes a possibility.
Yep.
So Nico says, "Hey Brad, when will my order from the Langley show appear?" So how much later was the Langley show?
Yeah, so that's just a simple mishap on our part. So the Langley cards are everything's there, but the information. Okay. So in our Google Docs, like we have, it's a learning process for us as we go. Mm-hmm. So I assume that Luke transported them over to the main page and I do the updates on Friday, but all the Langley orders weren't transferred over to it. So by the end of this weekend, we'll have all Langley, all Bossa, all Regina, the Thunder Bay ones, everything. Every order submitted to us will be on that sheet. So I thought Luke did it. He thought I did it. They just didn't populate. So we'll fix that. Gotcha. So by Monday, we will have that done for sure.
Nice. Good to know. Thank you for asking, Nico. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of, by the way, I didn't get a chance to mention this to Brad. I was having a little bit of fun. I mentioned, like I said, I mentioned the wrestling stuff. I was watching last night. Like I said, last night was a late night. I was recording a YouTube video and everything, but I was also watching the AEW show. But I was checking out a buddy of mine, Billy Cilio. He was out at the AEW show and he took a bunch of pictures with the wrestlers. I was like, oh, Billy, subtle. I like what you did there. I just started laughing when I saw it. I was like, yep. Mm-hmm. He's out there hanging out, taking pictures with a bunch of the wrestlers and a lot of things. Like, interesting. I got a kick out of it. Instagram can be fun. Sometimes it's fun to go in. It's like, all right, what'd you do? All right, I see what you did. He's big into a lot of the celebrity sightings in the pictures and stuff, but it was fun, especially since I had watched the show. And this is like in the post show, he's kind of hanging out with a couple of folks, so I thought it was kind of funny. So real quick, I'll touch on a couple of other things here as well. One of the other things that we were having a little bit of fun with in kind of the extended conversation, and it'll come a little into light a little bit more later on, is that we were basically talking about the comparison between, circling back around the topic, the 90s stuff that came out versus now. And it also kind of plays into Billy because he's with Upper Deck today and talking about how we're losing out on some of the technologies and stuff that was, some of the cards looked a little bit cooler back then because of the way a lot of the technology is being used. Now, we did chat about how you've got different suppliers and all that now, but here's a question. And since Baubles opened up the new Metal Universe, I think that's a good example. Metal Universe, you got PMGs, you got a lot of the classic, Planet Ice, you got a lot of the classic inserts on it, but sometimes they don't hold up to the classic, the OG, because we don't have the original suppliers. Now, you've also got the card shop as well. Do you feel like we're losing out a little bit? Do you feel like it's like, yeah, the effort's there to a certain degree, like they're trying stuff, but like you bring back a nostalgic thing, does it lose something when it doesn't quite hold up to the OG original?
Yeah, my personal thought, it does.
Yeah.
I really think so. I mean, Upper Deck game jerseys. So I have the original, the 1996-97. Mm-hmm. This year or last year, I forget, but they brought back the design was very similar to the first ones. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go collect the set, which I did. I started to collect it and then I filled it in. One guy gave me 90% of it. We did a deal. But I just kind of look at them and I'm like, they don't have that same, they don't mean much to me. So actually, when I looked at my collection, I was like, I'm never getting rid of my 96, 97s.
Right.
I'm keeping those with me forever. But I don't think I really want to keep the other ones now. So I'm thinking, yeah, we'll move those. Right. So you kind of lose that effect on it. But I opened a box of metal last night as well.
How'd you find it? What were your thoughts?
You know what? I really enjoyed it. I mean, I like the price point now at a couple $100, all in instead of $400.
Well, Bubbles is really upset. Jason Robertson's not in it. He couldn't even pump his cards.
No, yeah,
Jason Robertson didn't make the checklist.
He's not in there?
He's not on the checklist, no. We were actually, I went to double check just to be sure, and I was like, they got Klinberg, they got Sagan, they got Jimmy Benn, they got a bunch of other guys, but Jason Robertson is not in the metal checklist.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of a funny omission. I was like, okay.
And you know what's kind of weird about it too? When I was looking at the base cards, the base cards, there's two. Like they have two base cards of a lot of the players. Mm-hmm. Yep. With different unis on, maybe an all-star. But I
think what they did is they got like a higher number, where I think that's where they do the all-star. Similar to I think what they did last year. Okay. But yeah, Robertson didn't make either one of them, and some of the other guys have two cards and stuff like that. So. But it was kind of interesting the way that checklist turned out. It was just like, it just seemed a little bit odd, but I just thought it was very funny.
But so I like regular size cards. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do like the tall boys back and thing, but I'm not again, I get it, cool design, but like the cards that are like that, like
so that's the Planet Ice.
Yeah, that one's a small, like a guitar pick.
Yeah. And isn't there one that looks like like a cheese thing?
Yeah, I got that. The cheddar. I love that. I think that's funny, and I think
Okay.
it's cool in a effect. But yeah, they're called the cheddar.
Yeah.
But it's
I've been getting some mixed reviews though. I will say that some people were not into a couple of those inserts and subsets. The die cut thing is fine. Like Planet Ice is standard. Planet Ice has been used a couple of different times. That one makes sense.
yeah.
The cheddar one is kind of like, okay, fine, I get it. And what's the other one? The other kind of die cut one as well. What was the name of it? The big one's one I'm okay with, but there was another one that's like another triangle-ish one.
That's Metal Universe picks.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw a guy who was on Instagram in a video who literally used it as a guitar pick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was just like, all right. He's like, you want to shape it like this? I'll use it like a guitar pick.
Those ones are kind of cool.
Those ones I think are more interesting. I actually don't mind that one.
I think it's Big Man on Ice is what they're called.
Yeah, but that one you're using the die cut a little bit to get the words in there. I'm actually a little bit more okay with it. I think that's a little more interesting to me, my opinion.
But then my hit, which is my guy Braden Point.
All right, hold on. I'll share that one a little closer.
Yeah. So
now, how do you like the design for the metal in this? So, like using this as an example, how do you like the design?
I think it's cool. You know, and I do like it. It's numbered out of 10. The first 10 are
so that's
auto.
the green. So that's the green one.
Yeah, but I don't. So my personal collection is all on card autos.
Mm-hmm.
This is a sticker auto. Mm-hmm. I understand the whole thing. I'm not going to get in on that, but I just personally like on card autos. So this one I'm going to hold on to for a bit, but I will probably move it. So, but okay. Braden Point, I'm a huge fan. I have a great Braden Point collection, so I'm going to hang on to it for now.
Yep. I will say that it was a little bit of that Metal Universe did create a little bit of confusion because you had because there's also the Metal Universe, the AEW one, and a lot of the wrestling guys thought it was the AEW one that's being released, and they didn't understand it was a hockey one. So it created a little bit of confusion because we got the two Metal Universes happening, not that far apart presumably, but yeah, the wrestling one's still going to be a while, but the hockey one is in, and that's the one that people were referring to. Eric says Billy had the time of his life last night. You could tell he really did. And I enjoyed the picture, so I had fun with that. Peter Collect says, I think PSA mentioned all cars would have scans provided by now. Yes, that was another point mentioned in the interview, not just upper tier. When does that start? I have noticed for the last order I had, all those cards were scanned already. And this is now months ago. So I would assume, and the truth is, and I believe now at this point, all the new ones, I believe they're all being scanned now. Like, for example, that bulk one, like I'll test it with Brad on Friday. But if I grab one of the serial numbers, I should be able to pull it up on the site with a picture now for even the bulk ones. So it should be part of it as well. But I believe that has already started for currently because that was mentioned as well in the discussion.
Which I think is a great thing.
It's good, yeah. And I think it's better it helps people keep track. They can make sure certain things are right. So good evening, Kevin. Absolutely.
Congrats, Kevin, too, we should say. Kevin is it's his first we mentioned it earlier, but
yeah, we did reference it. I alluded to it. It's like good luck with the sleep pattern. Good luck, sir. Find a pillow close by.
It's his first night home with Nash. I'm going to say Nash Douglas. I think I should say that. I don't know if there's a hyphen in there or what he's going to do, but it's a big night for Kevin, and congrats to him. They've been through a lot in the last week, and as me and Carlos were joking, he's never going to sleep again.
Well, there's no listen. I can neither confirm or deny the rumor that the official middle name is Cheese Stringamon. Like, combining the family and the passions. Like this might be a thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Metal Universe was a Flair Skybox thing, though. It doesn't surprise me that it always made the mark. Yeah, but when you buy the IP, though, I think there's the reason I was referencing is because it is the new product, right? And people are opening up the boxes, and you've got fans. You've got fans of the Metal Universe. You got fans of the PMGs. You got fans of Planet Ice and a lot of the inserts. The jambalayas and a lot of these other designs that came out of the '90s, that came out of Fleer Skybox back then. But there is an expectation. And when I was having the discussion last night with Cards and Comics on YouTube here, we were chatting about the '90s stuff. One important thing that I wanted to make sure was understood was that you don't have the same suppliers as before. But at the same time, the reason why I mentioned the point with Brad was that unfortunately, if you have that expectation and you fall short, the fans are even more disappointed because you invoked something that they really like. And Topps is actually going to be put to the test, I think, in this upcoming year, because they've been doing those retro finest as part of their direct to consumer thing, and they've done the '93 finest, the '94 finest, the '95 finest. This next one will be 96 finest. That has the 3 tiers, and they're actually really nice. And then the following year, 97 finest, the gold embossed refractors are like very high end technology. What do you think happens if they're flat and there's no etching? There's the embossing isn't there or whatever. Like, so they produce it, but you fall short of like what people expect. And we used a couple of examples, so I won't spoil it because we talked for over 2 hours. Like, it was a full length conversation. But we were using a bunch of examples. I talked about Bowman best cuts. Well, they did redo best cuts after the fact. It didn't have the die cut with the thing. It's like, it's best cuts, and it looks kind of the same, but it's not the same. And that would be really disappointing. You could totally miss the mark on that. It would be terrible. And that's not cool because obviously people have an expectation. That's why I say Topps might be working itself into a corner if it doesn't have the tech to be able to match. Is all of a sudden it's like, this is a lamer version of something we really, really like. And that's really unfortunate. Prefer cards to fit in a regular size holder. Bought a beautiful color 36 Olympic card from Europe and disappointed when it arrived and saw it was oversized. We'll need to go one size up for PSA. Fair enough. Fair enough. Sounds good, Kevin. Newborn? Yes, absolutely. We'll catch up next week. Good to hear. Sounds good. But, and congratulations again. But that's why I say, though, it's dangerous to invoke the 90s nostalgia. Because a lot of us who were around during that original, it's like, and kind of my point that I made is that, well, unfortunately, like, if you do a bad job of it, then I'm like, well, then why would I be interested in this over just collecting the OG? Mm-hmm. And I use the 96 finest because I'm actually collecting the gold refractors. And I think they're beautiful. I think they're really well done. I think they're beautiful. They're not cheap. But it's like, well, I'd rather than get the original. Let me get Ken Griffey Jr. Let me get Frank Thomas. Because these were the guys that I grew up watching in 1996. Then it makes total sense. But you give me the new version. I would love to get a Juan Soto in a gold refractor version that looks cool. But I'm hoping that you do it justice. Because if you don't, then I'm not really interested.
Yeah.
So the potential is there. But you have to get it right.
And it's hard because we all want innovation, but at the same time, like I said, I like, just like with Peter, I like regular size cards. You know, the odd time here, like an oversized, whatever. But that's my thing. I guess I'm a traditionalist when it comes to it. So
I think it's fair. That's why I say, like, you have to be careful. And I understand why they do it. And the way I would present it to you is we have to be careful of nostalgia bait. We got to be super careful because collectors are passionate about it. And I've got some notes from Sherry that I'll share here in a second. But we've got nostalgia bait that's being used a lot by these card companies as a crutch for current designs. And I think that's a mistake because if you rely on it too much and you don't hit and you don't nail the design right, it's like you're actually doing something worse. You're taking something people like and doing it badly. That's worse than not doing it at all. I'd rather you then come up with something else and, do the cheddar. Maybe I like it, maybe I don't, but at least you tried something different as opposed to just using an old design and not getting it right. So real quick, I'll read the note from Sherry. If your order is in red in the status sheet, so this is if you go to the PSA Canada website, it's down there, and you're checking your statuses. And it says Halifax, you do not need to email or call. This means we'll have your order and I'll be processing for invoicing. So you receive this via email, so keep that in mind. And I'll make sure my email is right because last time I didn't get an invoice. Look, I don't mind not paying you, but let's make it for a good reason. I still got to get the invoice. If you have more than one order and only one is in red, you'll receive your invoice when all orders are complete for combined shipping. If you do have questions about that, you can ask, but that's an important note. Bear that in mind. And the most important, so this is most important. So note this is from Sherry, so beware. If you phone Sherry for a credit card payment and she does not answer, please only leave a voicemail with your name and number or send a text with your name and number. As per invoice, she will get back to you within 48 hours. Do not keep calling. So this is an important note.
We did have today, like, and again, things happen. And I think our numbers are listed on the PSA website. So usually if you call and you don't get an answer, some people just keep on calling, but that's Sherry's cell phone number and that's my cell phone number. So today when I went into the store, I come back, I left my phone in the truck. I went back out and I looked at my phone and it was a record for me. I've never had somebody, it was just a number that I didn't know, but it was 17 missed calls. So within a under 10-minute span, it might've been like 8 minutes, I had 17 missed calls from someone. So then I called the number back and I was just like, hey, it's just Brad calling you back from PSA Canada. Oh yeah, I gave you a call. I just tried you a couple times. I was like, yeah, 17. And he was like, oh, was it that many? I said, oh yeah, it's okay though. Because honestly, I get it from the other side. They don't know the difference, right? But it does make it awful hard when the orders are coming in, we're processing orders. And I seen Sherry in the last week, the phone just doesn't stop. That's part of the business. And some people can say, well, hire more people. But this is a twice a year thing. We know we get slammed with the Toronto shows. It's going to happen. But we'll get through it. So I think if we get back to people within 48 hours, I think that's acceptable. So
No, that's fair. And one point I would make, and again, I'm not going to tell anybody because when they're submitting stuff, it's their cards, and it's really important stuff to them. But that's why I like to practice what I preach. I was mentioning to Brad, and I was talking with you guys about the one order. One of those orders is cards that I put in an economy, and I put it at the higher tier because I wanted to make sure it was insured for more, because those are kind of grail cards in the collection that I've been chasing after for 20 years. So I wanted to make sure those were taken care of. I wanted to make sure I put in everything. It's going to cost me more. I could have tried to sneak it in, and I could have tried to be all sneaky. Like, that's not going to work. Number one, it's not going to work. But number two, I would rather make sure it's fully covered. And I put in like a much more, still conservative, but a lot more practical number that is probably more like if I went and put that stuff on eBay and it went whatever grade, what would it go for? I probably put a number more in line with what would make sense for that. So I tried to be realistic. Like if I just went open market, what would these go for? Probably this amount. Did I pay that? No, hell no. But that was because I caught the right time and I was able to get the right buyer and we came to a deal. But if I just went open market now, it would cost me more. So I have to kind of price it to market reality, not my fantasy. Oh, $100. Well, it wouldn't. It cost me more than $100, and it would cost me way more than $100 today. So I have to be realistic.
yeah.
So Dave here says nothing wrong with oversized cards. I'll gladly take all your Gaudy premiums and other 30s premiums. Enjoy. Yes. T3 Turkey Reds. Great photos on those cards. Also for the T3 Turkey Reds. I have to admit, a huge pet peeve of mine is the 87 Tops design that keeps rearing its ugly head. Tops has really run that one into the ground. And I like 87 Tops. I was a big fan of 87 Tops. I do enjoy it. But yes, they do go to that well a lot. That's what I'm saying. The part of the roundabout discussion that I was having is that the companies are beating the drum of the nostalgia of products and the nostalgia brands. That's why Tops it was Tops Heritage. I was always worried when Tops Heritage came out. I go, the 52 is beautiful. 53, really nice. 54, I'm not a big fan of it, but I get it. But as time goes on and on and on, I'm like, are you going to keep going to Heritage until listen, if you get to 1983, I was born in 1983. I refuse to accept Heritage. I will not allow it. It's like, you can't keep going forever. Listen, at some point down the road, if I live long enough, 1995 Tops is not Heritage. It doesn't matter how hard you try. I'm not cool with this, man. I'm just not cool with it. But that's the problem, is that if you keep reusing the same design, it's like literally it's an excuse for you to reuse your own design over and over and over again. It's like, what are we going to do for this year's Heritage? We'll move it up one year. They're in the 70s now. They've been doing this for years. So now they're I think, are they up to 73 or 74? I want to say 73.
Yeah, one or the other. I couldn't tell you for sure.
But the point is, that's about 20 years of Heritage, Brad.
Oh, yeah.
The Heritage needs to stop. We can't go to like 1978, 1979, 1980. No. Ricky's still alive and he's rolling in his grave. Just make it stop. Come up with another idea. Anything else is fine. Anyway, we'll see. We'll have a little fun with it. I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you caught it, Brad. So now we've got the dates for the next upcoming expos. So we've got another Edmonton Expo coming up, and then the Toronto Expo, I think, is back in April. Back at the end of April now, I think.
Yeah, so I had that list too. Let me see if I have it here.
Yeah, I figured I'd just mention it to you because obviously April doesn't feel as far away as normally it does. Right now it feels like kind of we're shifting back into gear now. And it's like, oh, well, actually we're in the middle of January. So actually we're going to start moving along again a little bit. So we'll kind of see how that one goes.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through. I'll just take a second here to see if I can find.
That's fine. While you're doing that, I will see if I can pull it up here because I've got it from their social media account and I can kind of share it with everybody here. Yeah, so I've got it here. I think this is it. Okay, let me kind of share it on the screen here while we're chatting.
Perfect.
And again, if you guys have any questions or anything, just let me know and we can chat about it. Okay, so we got the Edmonton one here. They've got it listed as May. Now, this is interesting because I think it's kind of in reverse of what I remember. So I think this is actually a bit of an awkward move. I get it, but it's kind of weird. Okay, so you got the Edmonton Expo May 5th to 7th, right? But then you got the Toronto Expo, and let me see if I can shift over to the other one here. Oh, here we go. And the Toronto Expo is April. So it's in the Toronto Expo in April, and we're going to do the Edmonton Expo in May? One kind of cannibalizes the other. It's a bit of a, like, if you're going to do one, you got, now I understand it's the Spring Expo, and normally that's not as crazy as the Fall Expo, but it's not like nobody shows up to the Spring Expo. They definitely do.
Yeah, so I think when I talked to Steve, last about that. To get the hall that the expo was just in, the only option was to have it in April. I don't think it was available in May. So I think that was part of the planning. There's a lot of logistics that were part of it. So
I think for the Toronto one, though, I'm less worried about it. For the Toronto one, the Toronto's the Toronto, but the Edmonton is the one they're kind of trying to get off the ground. They've only been just starting doing it. I feel like if you force me and tell me I can only attend to one, like I don't have an unlimited budget, it's like I'm going to Toronto one.
Yeah. So when you look, the tentative, I just have the schedule up here now too. So it looks like the big show that Dale puts on in Vancouver, the Langley, will be April 7th, 8th, 9th. So they're kind of all working in unison as well. They want to try to stagger them. So you got Vancouver, April 7th, 8th, 9th.
Okay.
Toronto, April 20th to 23rd. Edmonton, May 5th to 7th. Montreal wants to do their show the 19th to 21st. And then we're going to do a show in Halifax, actually, June 3rd and 4th, a 2-day show. So they kind of go from April all the way down to June, and that's going to be the show schedule.
That feels tight. I got to be honest. Like right now, I'll just say, like, this is more of an open-ended discussion. I'd love to get take from the chat as well. And Brad, I'd like to get your take as well. We're not ice cold, but we're definitely cooler. Like this market is cooler. Just across the board, it's cooler right now. It feels like that's a lot of shows for us is a regional basis in very short order. Like that feels like a very tight group of shows. Like for me, the expo is the expo. I'm gonna go to the expo, and you're gonna be at the expo, and obviously you guys are gonna attend a bunch of these shows. But it makes total sense for you. Like as a business, you should be at those shows. You know, receiving cards, chatting with people, all that. As an attendee, I'll be doing the Toronto one, and of course, I'll come by, I'll hang out, I'll chat with folks, and we'll do all that stuff. It'll be fun for me. For me, it's always fun. But that feels like a tight window of stuff, and I'm also trying to factor in like the logical discussion. Like this past week, we had a discussion. I know that as a collector, I'm slowing down because I've got plans for this year that go beyond, not even just beyond collecting, but also even in collecting. If my intention is to go to the national, which is right now in my personal schedule, I can't be doing 100 other things. I'm still going to attend both expos, no doubt, but I'm going to be scaling back compared to my normal. I still want to attend. I know people, so I'm going to go there. I'm going to hang out. We're going to chat. We're going to have a good time. It'll be fun. I want to say hi to the team. I want to say hi to you, Sherry, and everybody else. So I'm going to be there regardless. And I'm going to be there for a couple of days. So to me, it's a mini vacation during that time period. But I can't go too crazy because then my plan is to have another vacation that's also going to require resources for me. But if somebody is like a person in the show circuit, if you're somebody out west, so then do you make the trek to Toronto to then do another one in Edmonton a couple of weeks later?
Yeah, so my take on it, being at all these shows, and we're going to be set up at every one of them again, is that it's different crowds. Like when you see the crowd and the dealers in Vancouver, there's a few people that do travel, obviously the big dealers, but there's a lot of new people in Vancouver. Edmonton has Edmonton people, Toronto has Toronto people, Montreal has Montreal people. I really don't. There is the crossover from the bigger guys, but the bigger guys want shows anyways. So, but I understand from your point, Carlos, absolutely. Like, would I say for you to go out to Vancouver? No, absolutely not. You're going to do the Toronto show. Yeah. But there's so many people in Vancouver. It's a completely different crowd that we see. Even in Edmonton, it was a completely different crowd. And how I know that is from even looking, not just looking around the room, but based on submissions. Like we have our group of people now. It's like, oh, when you say a name, oh, he's Edmonton. Oh, he's Regina. Oh, he's Vancouver. Oh, he's Montreal. And it's so I get to see that. And these guys are submitting cards to us from each of those spots. Now there is a crossover, but it's very minor.
Well, look, as long as the dealers and the folks that do make a little bit of a trek, because there are folks that do the circuit, there are folks that like attend a lot of these shows, and bless them. You know, they're either in the industry or they have a little bit more time and latitude. It's like as an individual, I can afford to do certain things, but I have to plan it out. So for me, like my show calendar right now looks like 3 shows, two expos, and a national in between, and kind of I'm working my schedule around that. And that's basically, and I think for a lot of folks, that's kind of how they work their schedule. They pick and choose. I'd love to do a Dallas, but again, that would require a lot of forthright planning, and that might be very tricky. So
yeah, and they are kind of regional. Like when you look at it, anyone that doesn't know, isn't familiar with the shows. And again, we support them all, and they all do a great job. But Vancouver is more of a regional show. Edmonton's more of a regional show. Montreal is more of a regional show. Toronto is your big, massive show. Everything else is is a step down from size, not from quality, not from anything else, but from size, it's quite a bit a step down. So you always think of that in mind. If you had to pick one show to go to once a year, if you want to go to, then if you're a collector in hockey, go to Toronto, you know, like no questions asked. But if you do regional, if you live in Vancouver, the Vancouver show is awesome. So
Sounds good. Sounds good. Now you also did mention Halifax here, so I like the back-to-back comments. First is any update on the big show you've been planning for Halifax? Novagrower, has Halifax ever had a big show? Define big. What does big mean to you? Because depending on what you grew up on, like I'll actually give a quick point. Depending on what you grew up on, because I was having this chat the other day, I actually cut my teeth very early. One of my first shows that I ever attended was the Expo. And that's already years and years and years ago. That's years ago in my collect. So now imagine you're going to like a 2 or 3, 400 table show, and that's one of the early shows you attend. So big to you is now relative. But then you go to like a mall show that's 20 tables. Well, that feels real small. So like, but if you're somebody who's been attending those mall shows and those smaller shows for years, and then suddenly you attend an expo or a national, it's like this magnitude. Like you're trying to get your head around the idea. So again, big is relative. What does that mean to you?
yeah, no, absolutely. That is true. So it's funny when you watch, I watch obviously a lot of YouTube videos and I hear talking about shows, especially in the US, where they're like, yeah, it's a decent sized show. It's 40 tables, you know, set up, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So I always say we sell ourselves short here in Halifax a little bit, but our monthly show that we do, we usually have 40 to 50 dealers with 150 tables. Mm. Like those are great shows, and it's packed.
150 tables to me is a solid size show. Like I don't consider that a small show. It's not like a mega show, but 150 tables is a good, strong show. And again, you do price the tables, I think, favorably to encourage a decent attendance.
Yeah, so we do it. Yeah, we price our tables at $20 a table and let it go. So we do have the show that we're going to put on the first week of June. We're going to have a couple autograph guests coming in again, which we haven't done since. Geez, I think the last time, besides some of the Mooseheads, we brought in Jean Belleville and Johnny Bauer back. I don't know if that was probably 15 years ago was the last time we did. So we're going to have 2 good signers coming in to do the show, which is going to be pretty exciting for us, and a 2-day show. And we also got guys coming in from Montreal. We got a couple of guys coming in from Toronto to have some fun that weekend. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, that's fair. Look, I'm not completely convinced you can't get Johnny Bauer. Don't let the fact he's deceased stop you. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. I still get mail with autographs from Johnny Bauer to this very day. The man is still signing somewhere. I don't know how. I'm not sure. Like I have concerns, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So, do you attend a local show? I've been out of the local show thing a while. I think, unfortunately, in the area that I'm in, the local shows, you got to go to Hamilton. They've got some shows there. That's not bad. But then they put a couple in Toronto area. But when they do it like Leaside, and it's like, okay, look, for me, unless you're going to drive, you literally have to drive over because it is a pain. And then I'm like, and they do it for like 4 hours on like a Saturday. And I'm like, I don't do mornings. Brad knows this. Mornings, Carlos. No, we do not. Like, I will skip anything in the morning. Like, skip it. And then you put the show where most of the shows in the morning. I'm not going all the way over there for that. Dave says, I'm actually expecting to simply attend local shows this year. Last regional show I attended was not very good. No, that's fine. I think you should attend what makes the most sense for you. Small shows can be really fun too. If the dealers come into it with the right attitude, the right opinion, the right ability, and because the whole $20 thing means that you can have folks come in with some cool dollar boxes. There could be some really, if you like picking through dollar boxes, the opportunity, but that can be profitable for them. If I'm asking $500, $1,000 for a table, then they pretty much have, it's like, well, I need to make $1,000 back. How am I going to do? I'm not going to do that on $1 cards unless I'm carrying like a truck full of them and loading the table up of it. So you're probably going to only get, oh, well, everything's got to be like $50, $20, $100, $200, $500. I've got to make my $1,000. But at a smaller show with a $20 table, oh, you could have all kinds of stuff in there that comes out of the woodwork, which can be fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to that question here in a second. Halifax show is consistently good. World Championship 2008 was the signers, I think. All right. Dave says $20. That is cheap. Yeah. But it encourages people to come out. It's like, no, set up a table if you want to have fun with it. Halifax shows are always eventful, in my opinion. Not always the same old tables. I like it. Good to hear. Hey, Brad, submitted cards and tickets to the Langley show. Emailed you twice asking about the order number, but no response.
I don't have that email. I know we just caught up on every single email we have, so I'm not quite sure what could be going on. you know what? Do we have our email up there? Here, I'll just put it in.
Yeah, by all means, put that in there, and we'll see. So One and Only Hawk, I see PSA is a vendor sponsor of CSC trade show here in Toronto on the 29th. Is PSA expecting in-person submissions to the event? So the CSC trade show here in Toronto on the 29th.
Yeah, so Kevin is setting up there. He's going to be
Ah.
taking submissions as KD Collectibles, and obviously he submits with us. So, yeah.
All right, there you go.
Right.
So that's the answer to that one. One and Only Hawk, good evening. Sorry if that's already been answered. Just join in. No, that's fine. By all means, feel free. And that's the email there. Just make sure you're sending it to that one because that's the one they're checking. So,
Yeah, so it's funny because we know, like, we go through and we delete emails, and it's a game that we play throughout the day. It's a full-time job just answering emails. And just before we came on the show, it was at 9:40 we had all emails, and I was like, yes, we got every email. We're all caught up. Now I have about, this is how it shows. We 25 emails in the last 50 minutes that came through. Yep, I just got that from.
yep, from this one.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
Perfect. Yep. Okay, great. Good stuff. So, yeah, so Brad City's got it now. So they'll take a look at it there and respond to you. Sounds good. Yeah, and if you guys have questions about it, you can use, like I said, you can use that. There's the email address again, just so you can see it on the screen one more time, and then use it. Also, by the way, you can go to the website and you can access the email from there too. So just give you a couple of access options, and the website is scrolling across the ticker there for you. Cool. Good to hear. All right. So I think we're just about at the hour mark. So I think that's pretty good. If you guys got any last questions, we can talk about that. But I think it'll be interesting. So now that we've got those shows scheduled for the spring, for the early part of the year, the spring, I think that'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. I'm keeping an eye out on these things because I'm interested to see how a lot of this is going to play out. And I think it's going to be interesting beginning of the year. I'm kind of curious about a couple things myself, and that's where I'm at. There you go. Show is in the Halifax Forum multipurpose room, the 28th. Thank you, Doug. I like the capitalized. Like, Doug, don't yell. Don't yell. We can hear
you. He messed up on the M too. I got to rip him after. They made fun of me because I said "Great Big Sea" saying the Heave Away song, and it's the Fables, which I'll always remember now.
All those vicious Halifaxians, just vicious.
Yeah.
What was the date for June in Halifax so I can book it off work?
So we're looking at the 3rd and 4th that weekend. So we'll do a Saturday, Sunday.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Nice. Good times. Good times.
And I should give Doug is a key member of our team that does the shows in Halifax, and he takes care of all the bookings, helps with the setup, does everything else. He's our savior. So thank you, Doug.
What you drinking?
Oh, I get some lemonade. Sorry.
I was going to say, like, with the fogginess, I was wondering either it's watered down milk or it's something else. I was like, what's going on there?
No, I got still a little bit. I've had like a 6-week flu/cold. So after talking a lot, my throat gets a little, lemonade helps it out a little bit. So.
Gotcha.
It does look like dirty dishwasher though. That's
like
good.
It does, yeah. Like just with the haze, going on there. That's kind of it's a good call out.
Yeah.
I hate that song now, but art rules. There you go. Fair enough. Yep, we covered that one. I thought it was Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hey, that's a good call out too. That color wise, that's a good call out.
Yeah.
That's a classic. Sounds good. All right, folks. So
Awesome.
I appreciate you hanging out, and I appreciate the questions. Like I said, no, feel free to ask it because it's one of those things where as we get more of these questions, it also helps us kind of fine tune some of the topics. We're starting to get ourselves kind of situated and getting ourselves back on track. But as I said, the guys have been super busy. I'm hoping for the next couple of weeks now, as they're starting to get the stuff in and the stuff starts coming out from the expo, then a lot of cards are going to go out of PSA Canada HQ. And then I think it'll be a little easier to really start planning things because then we can actually chat a little bit and go like, all right, let's coordinate, let's set some stuff up, get some dates, get some people, because I think it'll be fun. We'd love you to hear a couple of other voices as well to get some different takes and opinions.
Absolutely
here. Thanks for the stream, the guys and gal. Facts. Don't forget about Sherry. We already gave pronouncements from Sherry tonight. Remember, recognize. Sounds good. So thank you
Awesome.
all. We'll be back next Thursday, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We'll talk a little bit more. We'll start putting together an agenda, I think, this week, so we can start now kind of thinking that a little bit ahead, and we'll see if we can get a couple of the other folks back in. So we'll definitely make that happen. Otherwise, like if you like the videos, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We're going to start trying to make a push here to get to the next year. I want to get to 300 subscribers. So if you're not already subscribed, do it. If you haven't already, hit the like button. And then that'll help kind of the channel get the stuff out there. And if there's stuff that you want to see or stuff that you want to know a little bit more about or get some insight in, ask the question, because then we can kind of structure that a little bit more.
Awesome.
Yannick's recognizing, making sure we include that. Very important.
Thanks,
All right,
Yannick.
everybody. Have yourself a good evening. We'll catch you next week.